was supposed to be a simple hike, a solo retreat into Black Hollow Forest, a place far removed from the clamor of city life and the tangled mess of my responsibilities. I'd read about it in a forum for outdoor enthusiasts. A hidden gem, untouched by time, they'd said. The allure of ancient trees and whispering trails drew me in. My plan was straightforward. Hike the main path, camp by the stream, and return before sundown the next day. Easy enough. By the time I reached the trailhead, the sun had already dipped below the horizon, leaving the sky a deep indigo. I had underestimated how quickly night fell in the forest. As twilight faded, the world around me transformed into a silent cathedral of shadows. The wind sighed through the trees, and the crunch of my boots on the gravel path felt deafening in the stillness. At first, the forest seemed peaceful, serene. But as I ventured deeper, a peculiar tension began to settle over me. The air grew colder, denser, carrying an earthy metallic tang. The shadows stretched and shifted, as if the trees themselves were leaning closer, whispering secrets to one another just out of earshot. That's when I saw them. Hovering among the trees were faint orbs of light, no larger than a tennis ball. They floated a few feet above the ground, shimmering faintly like distant stars. Fireflies, I thought at first, but these lights didn't flicker or move erratically. They hovered in place, unnervingly still, and their soft glow pulsed like a heartbeat. Curiosity gripped me. I took a tentative step closer, then another. The lights didn't retreat. Instead, they seemed to beckon, bobbing gently as if inviting me to follow. My pulse quickened. My rational mind screamed for caution. Stay on the trail, ignore the lights, turn back. But another part of me, the part that thrived on curiosity and the thrill of discovery, whispered otherwise. What were they? A natural phenomenon? Some kind of phosphorescent fungus? I reached for my phone to snap a picture, but my screen stayed stubbornly black, refusing to turn on. Fine, I muttered, stuffing the useless device back into my pocket. My breath clouded the air as I stepped off the path. The lights glided ahead of me, always just out of reach, weaving an invisible path deeper into the woods. The further I followed, the quieter the forest became. The chirp of crickets and the rustle of leaves faded into a deafening silence. I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see the trailhead still visible behind me, but there was nothing but endless trees. A cold knot of unease settled in my stomach. I should have turned back. But the lights pulsed again, more urgently this time, and my feet kept moving. The deeper I ventured, the stranger things became. The forest had changed. The dense thickets and gnarled oaks that once bordered the main trail were gone, replaced by towering pines that stretched impossibly high, their tops lost in the night sky. Their trunks bore strange markings, etched deep into the bark, intricate spirals, intersecting lines, and symbols I couldn't begin to decipher. I stopped to examine one of the carvings, running my fingers over the grooves. The wood felt unnaturally cold, like ice, and a faint vibration seemed to pulse beneath my fingertips. I pulled my hand back quickly, a chill racing up my spine. Just keep moving, I whispered to myself, my voice trembling in the silence. The lights reappeared, glowing brighter now, almost impatient. They flickered, urging me forward, and despite the growing dread clawing at my chest, I obeyed. Soon I began to notice other anomalies. Patches of moss glowed faintly under the light of the orbs, casting an eerie green hue over the forest floor. I saw no animals, no deer darting between the trees, no owls hooting from above. Even the insects had vanished. It was as if the entire forest was holding its breath, waiting. Then came the hum. At first, it was barely audible, a low, rhythmic vibration that seemed to emanate from the ground. But as I walked, it grew louder, resonating through my chest like the beating of a colossal heart. I pressed my hands to my ears, but it didn't help. The sound wasn't external. It was inside me. Panic began to set in. I stopped walking, forcing myself to think. How far had I gone? Could I find my way back? I turned in place, scanning the endless rows of trees, but the path I'd taken had vanished, swallowed by the darkness. The lights were all around me now, circling like predatory animals. Their glow illuminated the woods, casting long, warped shadows that twisted unnaturally. My breath quickened. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, not by the lights, but by something else, something hidden in the darkness. I called out, my voice cracking. "Hello? Is someone there?" No answer. The hum intensified. The lights flickered erratically, their pulses aligning with the frantic rhythm of my heartbeat. It was then that I saw it. A shadow, darker than the night itself, slithering between the trees. It moved with an unnatural fluidity, too large and too fast to be any animal I knew. Fear surged through me, and I did the only thing I could. I ran, but the lights followed. Running in the dark was a mistake, but terror had seized control of my body. My boots slammed against the uneven forest floor, each step a gamble against twisted roots and hidden stones. The light surged ahead of me, circling wildly like a pack of wolves closing in for the kill. Behind me, the shadow flitted between the trees, a formless mass that seemed to drink in the faint light of the orbs. The humming was unbearable now, a resonant, bone-deep vibration that made my vision blur. I clutched my ears, but the sound wasn't coming from outside. It was in my head, rattling in the hollow spaces of my mind. I stumbled into a clearing, gasping for air. The lights spread out around me, forming a loose ring, their glow throwing the surroundings into sharp relief. My legs threatened to collapse, but the sight before me jolted me upright. At the center of the clearing was a stone altar. It looked ancient, moss and vines clinging to its jagged edges. Strange symbols, similar to the ones etched into the trees, were carved deep into its surface, glowing faintly with a sickly green light. The air around it felt wrong, thicker, colder, as though the altar itself exhaled an unnatural presence. I backed away instinctively, but the shadow was there, blocking my retreat. It had grown larger, more defined, its edges rippling like smoke in the wind. 2 pinpoints of light, pale and malevolent, glared at me from within the darkness. A voice, guttural and layered as though spoken by many throats at once, filled the clearing. It didn't speak in words, but in an emotion, a command that burrowed directly into my mind. Stay. The lights pulsed in unison, a hypnotic rhythm that matched the pounding in my chest. I felt myself drawn toward the altar, my feet moving against my will. Every nerve in my body screamed to resist, but the compulsion was overpowering. The hum shifted, splitting into a cacophony of distorted whispers that twisted around me. I couldn't make out the words, but they were filled with malice and hunger. The shadow loomed closer, its glowing eyes fixed on me. A cold, alien intelligence radiated from it, as though it were studying me, weighing my soul. Desperation ignited something primal inside me. I grabbed a branch from the ground, a feeble weapon, but it was all I had. The moment I stepped toward the altar, the whispers rose to a deafening roar. The lights flared, their glow blinding, and the shadow lashed out, its form unraveling into a storm of inky tendrils. One of the tendrils struck me, sending me sprawling to the ground. Pain seared through my arm where it had touched me, the skin icy and numb. The branch fell from my hand as the compulsion to approach the altar returned, stronger than ever. "No!" I growled, gritting my teeth. With what little strength I had left, I began to trace a circle around myself in the dirt. It was instinctive, born of some half-remembered childhood superstition. I pressed my finger into the ground, carving the line as the shadow surged toward me again. The moment the circle closed, the lights flickered violently, and the whispers faltered. The shadow halted, its tendrils writhing just beyond the invisible boundary. The air grew heavier, thick with rage. The circle seemed to hold, but the force pressing against it was immense. The lights moved closer, their pulses erratic and frantic, as if they were trying to warn me of something worse. The shadow, now an immense, seething mass, pressed itself against the invisible barrier of the circle. Its eyes burned brighter, twin orbs of malice that bore into me. The humming returned, deeper and more resonant than before, vibrating through the ground and into my chest. It wasn't just a sound. It was a command, raw and irresistible. Break the circle. I clenched my fists, my body trembling as the pressure mounted. The symbols on the altar flared to life, casting the clearing in a sickly green glow. From the corner of my eye, I saw the ground around the altar begin to writhe, as though the forest itself was awakening to some ancient, malevolent force. The lights pulsed faster, their glow dimming with each beat, and I realized with growing horror that they weren't just entities. They were a warning. Whatever this thing was, it wanted me to break the circle, to give in. "Not a chance," I hissed through gritted teeth. The shadow slammed against the barrier, its tendrils clawing at the edges of the circle. Cracks began to appear in the dirt, glowing faintly as though the earth itself was being pulled apart. The whispers returned, no longer distorted but clear and venomous. "Break it. Release us. You are nothing." I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to block out the voices. My fingers dug into the ground as I racked my brain for a way out. The branch. My gaze darted to where it lay, just outside the circle. If I could reach it. The shadow lashed out, its tendrils wrapping around the branch and snapping it in two. Panic surged through me as I looked toward the altar. A faint crackling sound filled the air, and I saw a thin fissure appear in the stone. Whatever was inside, whatever the shadow served, was waking up. I had one option left. Trembling, I reached into my pocket and pulled out my flashlight. I hesitated for a moment, then hurled it with all my strength at the altar. The flashlight struck the stone with a sharp crack, and the clearing exploded with light. The shadows recoiled, letting out an ear-piercing shriek as they dissolved into nothingness. The lights around me flared one final time before winking out, leaving the clearing in darkness. When I opened my eyes, the forest was silent again. The altar was gone, but I knew it wasn't over. The silence in the clearing was suffocating. My ears rang from the shadow's final shriek, and my chest heaved with shallow, panicked breaths. Darkness closed in from every side, thick and impenetrable without the glow of the orbs or my flashlight. I staggered to my feet, clutching my burned arm. The pain was spreading, cold and sharp, as though frostbite was creeping through my veins. My vision swam, the edges of the world twisting and warping in unnatural ways. The altar was gone. Where it had stood was now a shallow crater, its edges smooth as glass, and the strange symbols etched into the ground around it had been scorched black. Whatever force had anchored the shadow to this place was gone, but the forest still felt wrong. I turned in place, searching for any sign of the trail, but the woods were a labyrinth of towering pines and skeletal branches. My circle, once a fragile barrier against the shadow, was now just a smudge of dirt at my feet. The trees leaned closer, their branches arching inward as if the forest itself sought to smother me. "Focus," I whispered, my voice shaking. "Get out of here. Get back to the trail." I stumbled forward, using the faint light of the stars to guide me. But the forest was unrelenting, its shadows growing darker with every step. The hum was gone, but its echo lingered in my chest, a phantom vibration that refused to fade. Then, just as I thought I might collapse from exhaustion, the lights returned. At first I thought it was my eyes playing tricks on me, faint glimmers in the corner of my vision. But when I turned, I saw them again. Faint, shimmering orbs hovering in the distance. Only now, they were different. They didn't pulse like before. They flickered erratically like dying embers in a cold wind. I froze. The lights began to drift closer, their movements jerky and unnatural, as if something unseen was pushing them toward me. A faint whisper reached my ears, so soft I almost dismissed it as the wind. But the more I listened, the clearer it became. It was my name. A cold dread settled in my stomach as the whispers grew louder, more insistent. The lights swirled around me, closing in, and the forest grew darker still, swallowing any hope of finding my way out. I turned and ran, ignoring the burning pain in my arm and the whispers clawing at my mind. But no matter how far or fast I ran, the lights followed, always just behind me, flickering and whispering, calling me back. The forest didn't want to let me go.